March 12, 1998, Austin, Texas. A retired fingerprint expert named A. Nathan Darby sits at his desk, examining two sets of prints through a magnifying glass. One is a copy of an unidentified fingerprint lifted from a cardboard box on the 6th floor of the Texas School Book Depository on November 22, 1963, the day President Kennedy was assassinated. The other is a fingerprint card from 1951, submitted to him with no identifying information. Darby doesn't know whose print he's analyzing. That's deliberate. After hours of meticulous examination, Darby signs a sworn notarized affidavit. He's found a 14-point match. Under U.S. law, 12 points are sufficient for legal identification. This exceeds the minimum standard. The fingerprint belongs to Malcolm Everett Wallace. Mac Wallace, a convicted first-degree murderer, a man who worked for Lyndon Johnson. For the next 10 minutes, you'll discover how a killer's fingerprint ended up at the scene of the most infamous assassination in American history. The story begins not in Dallas, but in Austin. October 22nd, 1951. Mid-afternoon, a warm Texas day. Mac Wallace, 30 years old, Marine veteran, economist for the U.S. Department of Agriculture, drives his station wagon to the Butler Pitch and Putt Golf Course. He walks into the clubhouse. Inside is John Kinser, a 33-year-old professional golfer who owns the course. No one hears their conversation, but several witnesses hear the gunshot. A single shot from a .25 caliber pistol. Witnesses see Wallace walking quickly from the scene, gun in hand. He gets into his car and drives away. 9 miles outside Austin, Texas, Highway Patrol pulls Wallace over. His license plate was noted by a witness. He's arrested immediately. The weapon is never recovered, but the evidence is overwhelming. Multiple eyewitnesses. His license plate documented. Wallace caught fleeing the scene. He's charged with first-degree murder. Open and shut case. In Texas, in 1951, killing a man in cold blood means the electric chair. But Mac Wallace doesn't panic, because Mac Wallace has friends. Powerful friends. Within hours, bail is arranged. Two of Lyndon Johnson's financial backers, Emmy Ruby and Bill Carroll, post bond on Wallace's behalf. LBJ's personal attorney, John Kinser, agrees to represent him. The same John Kinser who represented Johnson during his stolen Senate election in 1948. The trial begins February 18, 1952. Wallace doesn't testify. His attorney admits his client's guilt, but claims it was revenge. Kinser had been sleeping with Wallace's wife. The prosecution presents 29 hours of testimony from 23 witnesses, but strangely, they never establish a clear motive. Defense attorney Polk Shelton later stated they probably couldn't, because the real motive had nothing to do with Wallace's wife. John Kinser was having an affair with Josefa Johnson, LBJ's sister. Josefa was also involved with Mac Wallace. According to multiple sources, Kinser asked Josefa if her brother could loan him money. Johnson interpreted this as blackmail. Josefa had told Kinser about her brother's corrupt dealings. Lyndon Johnson ordered the hit. Mac Wallace carried it out. On February 27, 1952, after deliberating into the evening, the jury returns with a verdict. Guilty of murder with malice aforethought. 11 jurors vote for the death penalty. One argues for life imprisonment. Judge Charles O. Betts overrules them all. 5-year sentence. Suspended. Wallace walks free immediately. According to Bill Adler of the Texas Observer, several jurors telephoned Kinser's parents to apologize. They said they agreed to the suspended sentence only because threats had been made against their families. A cold-blooded murderer caught at the scene. Multiple witnesses. Convicted by a jury who wanted him executed. Walks free because Lyndon Johnson's lawyer defended him. Johnson's supporters posted bail, and the jury was threatened. The Austin Statesman wrote that this case, marked from start to finish by the unusual, had left the people of Austin shocked and bewildered. Mac Wallace had just learned the most important lesson of his life. As long as Lyndon Johnson protected him, he could kill without consequence. 5 months after his murder conviction, Wallace was employed by Temco Inc. In February 1961, he was transferred to Ling Temco Vought, which required a Navy background check. Despite his first-degree murder conviction, he received a security clearance. The Office of Naval Intelligence tried to revoke it for 11 years. They failed. Lyndon Johnson's protection was absolute. But Mac Wallace wasn't just a lucky murderer. He was a hitman. And the body count was growing. Henry Harvey Marshall, age 51, U.S. Department of Agriculture official in charge of the federal cotton allotment program for Texas. In 1960, Marshall was asked to investigate the activities of Billy Saul Estes, a Texas con artist and close friend of Lyndon Johnson. Estes was running massive fraud schemes involving non-existent fertilizer tanks and illegal cotton allotment transfers. Marshall discovered the schemes were funneling millions into LBJ's secret slush fund. Marshall refused an LBJ-arranged promotion to Washington. It became clear he was about to blow the whistle. According to testimony later given by Billy Saul Estes, Lyndon Johnson, Cliff Carter, Mac Wallace, and Estes himself met several times to discuss the problem. Johnson finally said, "Get rid of him." Mac Wallace was given the assignment. June 3, 1961. Marshall's body is found on his family farm north of Bryan, Texas. He's been shot 5 times in the side with a .22 caliber rifle. He has a deep cut in his head. He has 15% carbon monoxide concentration in his lungs. County Sheriff Howard Stegall decrees it as suicide. No crime scene photographs are taken. No blood samples collected. No fingerprints checked. Marshall's truck is washed and waxed the following day. Marshall's wife and brother refuse to believe he committed suicide. They post a $2,000 reward for information leading to a murder conviction. Texas Ranger Clint Peoples investigates and concludes it would have been utterly impossible for Marshall to have taken his own life. A gas station attendant reports that on the day of Marshall's death, a stranger asked for directions to Marshall's farm. Peoples eventually identifies the man as Mac Wallace. But the official verdict stands: suicide. By early 1963, the body count connected to Lyndon Johnson and Mac Wallace has reached at least 8 people. But Johnson has a bigger problem. He's about to be indicted on corruption charges. The Bobby Baker scandal is exploding. The Billy Saul Estes fraud investigation is closing in. Johnson faces political ruin and possible imprisonment. Then, on November 22, 1963, President John F. Kennedy is assassinated in Dallas, Texas. Lyndon Johnson becomes president. All investigations into his criminal activities stop immediately. Lee Harvey Oswald is arrested and charged with killing Kennedy from the 6th floor of the Texas School Book Depository. 2 days later, Oswald is murdered by Jack Ruby before he can stand trial. The Warren Commission concludes Oswald acted alone. Case closed, but there was a problem. On the 6th floor, investigators had lifted multiple fingerprints from cardboard boxes that formed the sniper's nest. Most were identified as Oswald's. He worked in the building, but one fingerprint remained unidentified. Labeled unknown. Filed away in the National Archives. For 35 years, that fingerprint remained a mystery. Then in 1998, Texas researcher Jay Harrison had an idea. What if that unknown fingerprint belonged to Mac Wallace? Harrison obtained Wallace's 1951 fingerprint card from the Texas Department of Public Safety. He also obtained a copy of the unknown print from the National Archives. Harrison submitted both prints to Nathan Darby for blind analysis. Darby was a certified latent print examiner with decades of experience, member of the International Association of Identifiers, former head of the Austin Police Department's identification section. Darby examined the prints. He found 14 points of match. U.S. law requires 12 points for legal identification. Darby later stated he actually found 34 points of congruence, far beyond the threshold for coincidence. On March 12, 1998, Darby signed a sworn notarized affidavit confirming the match. The unknown fingerprint on Box A in the sniper's nest belonged to Malcolm Wallace. The implications were staggering. Mac Wallace, a convicted murderer, Lyndon Johnson's personal hitman, had left his fingerprint on a box in the sniper's nest. According to forensic experts, fingerprints can only be lifted from cardboard within 24 hours of deposition. Wallace had been there on November 22, 1963. the day Kennedy died. The mainstream press wouldn't touch the story. The History Channel eventually aired a documentary featuring the fingerprint evidence in 2003. The episode was called The Guilty Men. It was immediately banned from further broadcasts after being attacked by Johnson's former associates. Mac Wallace's fingerprint remains in the National Archives. Box A from the sniper nest is stored as evidence. The 14-point match is documented in a sworn affidavit. These are facts. The question isn't whether Mac Wallace's print was found in the sniper's nest. It was. The question is, what was LBJ's personal hitman doing on the 6th floor of the Texas Schoolbook Depository on the day John F. Kennedy was assassinated? The fingerprint doesn't lie. Box A, November 22nd, 1963. The evidence is there. The question is, are you ready to believe it?